The envelope felt heavy in my hands, not with the weight of the paper inside, but with the crushing density of the audacity it represented. It was Christmas Day, the air inside my home thick with the scent of pine needles and the expensive pumpkin spice candles my daughter, Regina, insisted on burning. She stood before me, her hands clasped together, watching my face with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. Beside her, her husband, Justin, shifted his weight from foot to foot, trying to look casual but failing miserably. They had just handed me their gift. It wasn't a sweater, a watch, or a framed photograph of the family we used to be. It was their financial ruin. Specifically, it was the paperwork for Justin's $400,000 debt, clipped neatly together with a sticky note that read, "For the family." I stood there, holding their attempted destruction of my retirement in my manicured hands, and I did something that surprised them. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, though they were too self-absorbed to notice the difference. It was the calm, detached expression of a man who has already dug the grave and is simply waiting for the occupant to fall in. I walked over to the antique mahogany desk in the corner of the living room, uncapped my pen, and signed the document. The tension in the room snapped like a cut wire. Regina let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for weeks, and Justin's shoulders dropped 3 inches. They thought they had one. They thought the old man, the stable, boring, predictable banker, had saved them once again. With the ink still wet on the page, I turned back to them and picked up the red box sitting under the tree. It was elegant, wrapped in expensive tissue paper and tied with a gold silk ribbon. "I have a gift for you, too," I said softly. "Consider my response." Regina's eyes lit up, likely expecting a check or perhaps the keys to a new car to replace the one she couldn't afford. She took the box, her fingers trembling with greed, and lifted the lid. She didn't smile. She screamed. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated shock, the sound of a reality crumbling. But to understand that scream, and to understand why I signed that paper with such eerie calm, you have to go back 2 weeks. You have to understand the silence that came before the storm. It had started on December 10th, a Tuesday that felt like any other. I was halfway up the stairs, a wicker basket of laundry propped against my hip, when a voice drifted through the crack in Regina's bedroom door. I froze. "No, seriously, Amber. It's perfect," my daughter said. It was a tone I hadn't heard in years, that specific, self-satisfied lilt she used in high school when she had successfully lied about a curfew or manipulated a teacher into changing a grade. "We present it as a gift," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial purr that chilled my blood. "An opportunity for him to help family. Dad won't be able to say no. You know how he is about responsibility and all that crap." I set the laundry basket down on the carpeted step, my movements slow and deliberate. My hands weren't shaking yet. The shock was acting as a temporary anesthetic. "Justin's 400,000? She laughed, a sound that grated against the walls of the house I had built for her. "Yeah, the whole thing. We frame it as him co-signing, but really, we're transferring the liability. Dad's got the credit score, the house equity. Banks love guys like him. Stable, boring, predictable. Stable, boring, predictable." The words hung in the air like smoke. "He'll think he's being noble," she added, delivering the final blow. The great Leonard Crawford saving his little girl one more time. "By New Year's, we'll have the papers signed. Then we can breathe again. Maybe even book that Cabo trip we wanted. Put it on his card while we're at it." Her voice went lower, darker. "Honestly, he owes us. 3 years we've been temporarily living here. That's worth something, right?" I picked up the laundry basket and walked back down the stairs, my footsteps silent on the plush runner. In the hallway mirror, my reflection stared back at me. It was the same face as the morning, gray hair neatly combed, reading glasses hanging from the collar of my shirt, deep lines etched by 42 years of scrutinizing financial statements. But behind the wire-rimmed glasses, the eyes had shifted. They had hardened into something flinty and unrecognizable. The walls of my own home, the house I had paid off through decades of discipline and double shifts, suddenly felt foreign. For 42 years, I had worked in banking. My specialty wasn't customer service, it was auditing. I I spent a lifetime catching fraudsters who played exactly these kind of games. We called it pattern recognition, spotting the manipulation before the ink dried. And here I was, standing in my own hallway, listening to my only child plot to hang a noose of debt around my neck and call it Christmas present. I went to the kitchen and began folding towels with mechanical precision. Regina came down 20 minutes later, radiating sunshine and false innocence. "Dad, I didn't know you were home. Want some coffee?" she asked, moving around the kitchen with practiced ease. "That'd be nice, honey," I said, my voice steady, betraying nothing. She ground the expensive beans she'd bought last week, $40 a pound. For a couple claiming destitution, they certainly knew how to consume luxury. "Justin and I were thinking we should do something special for Christmas this year," she said, handing me a mug. "Really make it memorable." Her eyes were bright with what I had once mistaken for affection. Now, through the lens of the conversation upstairs, I saw it for what it was, calculation. "We have a surprise for you," she beamed. "A surprise? How thoughtful," I replied, keeping my tone flat. She didn't notice. Why would she? To her, I was just Dad. Reliable, pushover dad who had never said no when it mattered. "You're going to love it." "It's very meaningful," she promised. I sipped the coffee. It was excellent, of course. Everything about their lifestyle was excellent. The only question was who was actually footing the bill. That evening, I retreated to my study, the one room in the house they rarely entered, mostly because it lacked anything Instagrammable. I sat in the dark, illuminated only by the glow of my computer screen, and let the grief wash over me. I pulled out old photo albums, needing to see the evidence of what once was. Regina at 8, gap-toothed and laughing at a party one week after her mother's funeral. Regina at 13, rolling her eyes but unable to hide a smile. Regina at 22, graduating college, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. When had that girl disappeared? Or had she ever existed? Was I simply a resource to her now? I pushed the albums aside. 42 years as a bank auditor had taught me one fundamental truth: follow the money. Money doesn't lie, even when people do. If they wanted to treat me like a bank, I would treat them like a client under investigation. I opened a blank spreadsheet and started listing what I knew, the things I had observed but willfully ignored because I wanted to believe in the daughter I had raised alone. The new BMW Regina drove, a $60,000 vehicle at least. The designer handbags that appeared monthly. Justin's vintage watch collection lining the dresser in the guest room they had colonized. Dinner receipts I'd glimpsed in the trash. $100 for sushi, $200 for steakhouses, all while they claimed they were struggling between opportunities. 3 years of just a little more time. $400,000 in debt. And they wanted me to carry it gift-wrapped, like I should be grateful for the opportunity to ruin my retirement. The funny thing about being an auditor is that you develop a sixth sense. Numbers tell stories, and right now, the numbers were screaming. Justin claimed his startup had failed, but failed startups don't fund BMW leases. Bankruptcy doesn't buy Tiffany bracelets or season tickets to the Bulls. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I had set up the home network. I had every password. I accessed the router logs. I retrieved financial statements they had carelessly left in the printer's memory. I pulled credit card bills from the digital recycling bin. By midnight, I had enough to confirm what my gut had been whispering. Something was deeply, deliberately wrong with their financial picture. The debt was real enough. I found panicked emails from Justin to a man named Marcus regarding the $400,000. But the poverty? The poverty was performance art. I leaned back, studying a photo on my desk. Regina, 5 years old, dressed as a princess. I had sewn that costume by hand until 3 in the morning because store-bought wasn't good enough for my little girl. "You're the best daddy in the whole world," she had told me then. The little girl in the photo wouldn't recognize the woman upstairs plotting to financially ruin her father. But looking at the photo, I recognized myself. I remembered who Leonard Crawford actually was. Not just a father, not just a retiree. I was a professional fraud investigator who built a career catching people who thought they were smarter than the system. If Regina and Justin wanted to play financial games, I would be happy to teach them how the professionals played. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, memories invaded. I remember the hospital 30 years ago, the doctor telling me my wife was gone. I remembered telling 8-year-old Regina, "It's just you and me now, baby girl. But we're going to be okay." I had kept that promise. I learned to braid hair, attended every soccer game, paid for college without loans by working double shifts. Just us against the world. When had that stopped being enough? I traced the timeline like I was reviewing a failing company's ledger. Regina's graduation. Her first job. Then, Justin Morrison. Tall, confident, full of big ideas. Entrepreneur, he called himself. I had other names for him, but I kept them to myself because Regina glowed when she looked at him. Then came the request, "Just for a few weeks, Dad, while we look for the perfect place." Weeks became months. The guest room filled with their clutter. Their expensive organic groceries crowded my refrigerator while I bought store brands. "We're so close to a breakthrough," Justin would say over breakfast, scrolling through his phone. "The investors are really interested. Just need a little more runway." I had raised concerns once. Regina's eyes had filled with tears. "I thought you wanted to help us, Dad." Mom would have understood. That was the nuclear option. She knew I couldn't defend against her mother's memory. So I swallowed my doubts. I told myself good fathers don't keep score. But my auditor's brain did keep score. It was instinctive. And now, the score was being settled. The next morning, I watched them from my study window. They were loading shopping bags into the BMW. Premium leather seats. I had my laptop set up to face the window. To anyone glancing in, I looked like a retiree checking email. In reality, I was running a surveillance operation. "Did you see his face last night?" Regina's voice drifted through the open kitchen window below. When I mentioned the surprise, he looked so hopeful. Justin laughed, a sound like a puppy waiting for a treat. "God, I almost felt bad." "Almost," Regina scoffed. "Please, the man still uses a checkbook. He probably thinks we're just going through a rough patch." I zoomed in on my screen. My network monitoring software showed their devices connected to my Wi-Fi. Every website, every login. They thought I was technologically illiterate, a funny assumption for a man who spent the last decade of his career catching cryptocurrency fraud. Over the next 3 days, I compiled what I privately called the Morrison file. It started with the obvious. Justin's LinkedIn claimed he was CEO of a consulting firm. I ran the business registration. 0 tax returns. 0 reported income. The company was a ghost, existing only to look good on business cards. Then, Regina's credit cards. She had been careful, using her maiden name. But I found 3 cards with total balances of $97,000. Minimum payments were consistently late. But the real treasure was on Justin's laptop. He left it open on the kitchen counter while he showered. 15 minutes was all I needed. His emails told a fascinating story. There was Marcus, a former partner, threatening him about the $400,000. "I'm not going to prison because you got greedy," Marcus had written. Prison. Interesting word choice. I found spreadsheets tracking expenses. Designer coffees, $3,000 annually. Gym memberships, for $1,000. Regina's salon visits, $6,000. All while asking me to cover the water bill. And then, the cherry on top. A course Justin had purchased for $800 called Building Wealth After Bankruptcy. He was literally studying how to hide assets while looking broke. The irony was so thick, I laughed out loud in the empty kitchen. I needed legal firepower. I went to see Margaret Stevens, a ruthless attorney recommended by a former colleague. Her office smelled of old money and leather. "I need to discuss a hypothetical situation," I told her. "In my profession, hypothetical usually means definitely happening," Margaret said, her eyes sharp. I laid it out. Daughter and son-in-law living in my home, mounting evidence of fraud, an incoming request to co-sign debt. "How old are you, Mr. Crawford?" she asked. 67, I replied. "Then you need to know something. Illinois has strong laws regarding the financial exploitation of the elderly. What you're describing, manipulation to assume debt under false pretenses, is potentially criminal." I hadn't considered the criminal angle. I just wanted to protect my house. "If someone had evidence," Margaret continued with a cold smile, "hypothetically, They could change estate documents, establish eviction proceedings, and report suspected fraud to the IRS. Next, I met Darlene Parker, a financial investigator. She was young, sharp, and drank espresso that looked like motor oil. "Your son-in-law sounds like a piece of work," she said. 3 days. I'll do a full workup. 2 days later, Darlene called me. "Mr. Crawford, sit down." I was already sitting. "Go ahead. Your son-in-law is hiding about $165,000 in accessible assets. He has $50,000 in a crypto venture with his buddy Marcus, another $35,000 in an offshore account. And here's the kicker. He sold his stake in a sports memorabilia business 2 months ago for $80,000. He hasn't declared any of it. $165,000. I wrote the number down. "And he's claiming bankruptcy," I muttered. "It gets better," Darlene said. "Your daughter is opening credit cards under her maiden name. The banks don't know she's married, which affects the risk assessment. She's defaulting strategically. They had the means to pay a significant chunk of their debt. They were just choosing not to. They were choosing to make me pay it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was cold, focused. They weren't desperate. They were con artists running a long game on the man who loved them most. I opened a new folder on my laptop named Christmas Gift. I drafted a comprehensive analysis of the Morrison family finances. Charts showing income versus expenditure. Timelines of lies. Every were so broke. Conversation matched against a credit card statement showing a luxury purchase. I worked like I was preparing for a board presentation. The board just happened to be my daughter and her husband. I called Ted Wilson, an old friend and notary. "I need you to notarize some documents. Make them bulletproof. You want to bury them in their own paperwork." Ted asked, grinning. "I want them to see exactly how I see them," I replied, "through the lens of 42 years of professional skepticism." On December 20th, I bought a gift box. Elegant red cardboard with gold trim. Inside, I placed the layers of my response. The bottom layer was Darlene's 47-page financial report. The middle layer contained Margaret's legal documents, eviction notice, power of attorney revocation, and a will amendment establishing a charitable trust. The top layer was the Morrison family financial analysis, prepared by Leonard Crawford, senior bank auditor, retired. And the finishing touches, a bright plastic toy calculator from the dollar store, and a children's book titled My First Million, Teaching Kids About Money. I wrapped the box in tissue paper and tied it with a silk ribbon. I hid it in my closet. Every time I walked past it, I felt the anticipation a chess player feels when checkmate is 3 moves away. December 23rd arrived. The house smelled of Regina's expensive pumpkin candles, bought on credit, no doubt. Dinner was a production. The good china, the roast I had paid for. It was a stage set for a play about a happy family. "This is nice," Justin said, carving the meat. "Feels like the old days." "It's lovely," I said, playing my part. As Regina served coffee, Justin cleared his throat. The signal. "Leonard, Regina, and I wanted to talk to you about something important." "We've been thinking a lot about family," Regina added, her voice dripping with rehearsed sincerity. "Things have been rough," Justin said. "My business ventures haven't panned out. The market's been brutal. We've hit a wall," Regina whispered, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "We didn't want to burden you, but you're all we have." "How much?" I asked, though I knew to the penny. "400,000, Justin said, looking at the tablecloth. "With your equity and credit, you could co-sign a consolidation loan. We'd pay it back. It would just buy us time to get back on our feet." "Get back on your feet," I repeated. 3 years living rent-free, and you've accumulated $400,000 in debt. "It's complicated," Justin stammered. "Regina, when did you last apply for a job?" I asked. "I've been applying." "The market is 3 positions in 6 months," I interrupted. "I check your LinkedIn." "Leonard, we're not here to be interrogated." Justin snapped. "We're asking for help." "No," I said quietly. "You're asking me to absorb the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. Dad, please. Just sign by New Year's. A fresh start." "A fresh start," I mused. I stood up and walked to the tree. I retrieved the red box. "I agree. So, I prepared something for you. Consider my response." Regina smiled, thinking I had folded. Justin tore off the ribbon. He found the toy calculator first. His smile faltered. What is this? Keep looking. Regina pulled out the children's book. Her face flushed. Dad, I don't understand. Then Justin found the report. Comprehensive Financial Investigation, Morrison Family Unit. The room went silent. The choir on the stereo sang about peace on earth. Regina scanned the first page. You investigated us? I audited you. I corrected. Investigation implies suspicion. Audit means I had evidence. Justin was flipping pages, his face turning the color of ash. He saw the offshore account, the crypto, the $80,000 memorabilia sale. Page 15 is interesting, I said conversationally. It details your claimed bankruptcy against your $165,000 in hidden assets. You spied on us. Regina cried. Observe what you left in plain sight. Keep reading. Justin pulled out the eviction notice. Notice of termination of tenancy, he read, his voice shaking. You're kicking us out? You have 90 days. March 24th, 2025. Plenty of time. Regina grabbed the power of attorney revocations. Then the will amendment. You're leaving everything to charity? She gasped. Read the fine print. You can access the trust after 5 years of documented financial responsibility. Basically, you have to become an adult. This is insane, Justin shouted, pacing. You can't do this. December 10th, I said, cutting through his noise. I heard you on the phone with Amber. I heard you call me predictable. I heard you say I was a checkbook with sentimental weaknesses. Regina crumbled. I didn't mean. I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Her voice filled the room. Dad won't be able to say no. You know how he is about responsibility and all that crap. I have 17 separate conversations, I said. Illinois is a one-party consent state for recordings in a private residence. We were going to pay you back. Justin leaped. With what? The money you hid in the Caymans? The IRS is going to be very interested in that. Justin froze. He pulled the final document from the box. Notice of suspected financial fraud to the Internal Revenue Service. You reported us to the IRS. I reported undeclared income. If they find what Darlene found, and they will, you will face audits, penalties, possibly criminal charges. You're destroying your own daughter. Justin yelled. No, I stood up. You are destroying yourselves. I'm just ensuring I don't go down with the ship. I looked at Regina. I raised you better than this. Your mother would be ashamed. Get out, Regina screamed. If you hate us so much, get out. This is my house, I reminded her. You have 90 days. The next morning, Christmas Eve, the silence in the house was heavy. When I came down to the kitchen, they were waiting. We need to talk, Regina said. She tried the emotional angle first. Dad, we were desperate. We're not bad people. Desperate people don't buy $2,000 handbags, I said. You didn't ask for help. You plotted to trap me. That's fraud. We'll sue you, Justin threatened. Invasion of privacy. Go ahead. Spend that hidden $165,000 on a lawyer. See how fast the IRS asks where you got it. The doorbell rang. It was Margaret Stevens. Good morning, she said, stepping in. Everything Leonard has done is legal. The eviction, the audit, the recordings. If you try to claim elder abuse, you'll be handing the prosecutor evidence of your own attempted exploitation. Justin looked at Regina. They were cornered. We'll leave, Justin said. We'll go next week. Just call off the IRS. It's out of my hands, I said. You had income. You defrauded creditors. Those are crimes. I turned to Regina. You stopped being my family when you decided I was an ATM. I told her. You have 87 days. The fallout was swift. On December 26th, Margaret called. Justin's creditors received copies of your report. They're filing to seize his hidden assets. The crypto, the offshore account, it's all being frozen. On the 27th, Regina burst into the kitchen. They closed my credit cards. Chase, Capital One, all of them. Banks don't like it when you lie about your marital status to manipulate risk assessments, I said calmly. You told them, she accused. My lawyer notified them. They have a right to know. Why are you doing this? She sobbed. Because you never gave me a chance to help you honestly. You chose the con. Now you're living the consequences. New Year's Eve arrived. They were leaving early. Justin had found a truck. I watched from my study window as they loaded boxes. Their expensive furniture looked cheap in the gray winter light. Regina looked up and saw me. I didn't wave. I went downstairs as they were finishing. "Regina," I said. She turned, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You wanted to play adult financial games," I said. "I showed you how it's done professionally. The only difference is I played honestly." The hope died. "Goodbye, Dad," she whispered. I watched the truck disappear around the corner. I went inside and locked the door. The house was empty, but for the first time in 3 years, it was mine again. I walked into the living room. The loan documents, the $400,000 noose, were still on the coffee table. I took them to my study and fed them into the shredder, watching the strips of paper fall like confetti. My phone buzzed. It was Ted. "Sarah's making lasagna tomorrow. Come over. You shouldn't be alone." I hesitated, then typed, "Not sure." Ted replied instantly, "Not asking, telling." I smiled. "Okay." I looked at my computer and moved the Morrison file into a folder labeled closed cases. Margaret emailed, "IRS agent is impressed with your documentation. They're proceeding. You did good, Leonard." At midnight, fireworks exploded over the Chicago skyline. I stood at the window, 67 years old, retired and alone. But I was also free, financially secure. No peresotes, no lies. Somewhere out there, Regina and Justin were learning what accountability felt like. I hope they learned the lesson. But whether they did or not, it wasn't my problem anymore. Life after 67 was just beginning. And this time, I was choosing who got to be a part of it.